but then some cyclists started dying in the early 90s and mid 90s. There was maybe a dozen or two that died mysteriously, and it was never clear what the cause was. So everybody said it's the EPO. They're the blood's too thick. They're having strokes or heart attacks, and even I bought this idea. Yeah, I guess that's it. I wrote this article for Scientific American on Doping in Sports that this is why it's wrong, because people are dying. But this guy's argument is it was never proven that these people died, and furthermore, he takes on steroids. This is the whole thing that started with Lyle Alzado, the great Oakland Raiders linebacker, who said, I got brain cancer. After he was done playing, they said it was due to all the steroids I was taking. Then the meme started. Oh, steroids causes cancer. Steroids feeds cancer, causes tumors to grow. This guy is saying that's never been proven. And so I'd like to look into this more before I review this book. Is this really true? How do we know that steroids are dangerous? I mean, isn't it the dosage? As Michele Ferrari said, Lance's doping doctor, it's orange juice. If you drink too much orange juice, it's dangerous. It's the dose. So some steroids, some EPO, some growth hormones. Some of this should be maintenance. What triggered this was looking at those huge guys. I mean, you get pounded, you got to play again next week. How do you do that? Well, I got to get the massage, take the jacuzzi, and take some drugs.
That was the premise of Bigger, Stronger, Faster. It was a big thing, was that where are all the bodies? Where is this steroid epidemic that people are talking about? You're looking at even in bodybuilders. I mean, some of them do die from it, but the sheer amount of drugs those guys are taking to achieve those behemoth sizes.
Yeah.
If you look at some pro bodybuilders that are just outlandishly huge, a lot of those guys, it's a battle of who can take the most drugs, who can power lift the most, who can lift the most, who can train the hardest, but also who can tolerate the most ridiculous levels of these drugs. And so some of those guys die.
Right.
But
there's the dosage issue.
Yes, exactly. Right. Because the amount of people that are doing them is off the charts. If you think about professional athletes, you think about all the different athletes that are doing performance-enhancing drugs. If they were really dying from this stuff,
the body should be everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
They should be just dropping like flies.
See, I think they're just getting smarter about it, and they know it's called microdosing in cycling with the EPO. You just take a little bit, just give it just a little bump, just for maintenance. When I wrote that story for Scientific American, I interviewed Frankie Andreo, who was one of Lance's teammates in the '99 and 2000 seasons. And he took EPO, and he didn't really want to, avoid it as long as he could, but he said he was just getting dropped from the main peloton, and he couldn't even do his job as just Lance's domestique to carry his water bottles 30 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So you got to be fit. So he said he was getting dropped just doing that. And so it was like, I can't even be on the team, can't do my job. So he took it just to stay in the race, just so I could be a bicyclist.
Just so you could deliver water.
Yeah, and I think a lot of them do that. It's like, I don't want to do it, but I got to do it because stay healthy and strong and keep going.
Well, you'd have a unique insight into it because you did a lot of cycling.
Yeah.
And you did it at a very high and competitive level. So you had an inside view as to the requirements. And I think it's one of the more unique sports in that the requirements are so incredibly grueling in the amount of time that you're working. Like, you might not be working with as much effort, say, as a sprinter who's running 100 meter, like a Usain Bolt type character, but the amount of time involved in expenditure of energy is huge. It's one of the more unique and weird things about cycling is you're doing it for hours.
Yep.
Like, what is one day in the Tour de France? Notice how I say France and not France.
Oh, there's 4 to 6 hours.
4 to 6 hours of racing, of pumping your legs. 4 to 6 hours. That's crazy when you think about it. So even if it's easier than running a sprint, even if it's easier than running up to the top of a hill, the amount of time you're spending doing it is another consideration. And then mentally, the drag on maintaining must be huge, must be crazy.
Well, this is when I interviewed Greg LeMond. He said that his teammates came to him. This was in the 91 or 92 season, his last. And when EPO was rampant in the peloton, everyone figured it out. Greg didn't want to do it. And his teammates were saying, well, we just course of a 3-week tour, just your hematocrit just drops just from fatigue. He said everybody else, it's not like they're getting an unfair advantage by going above their normal performance. They're just staying level, whereas the rest of us are dropping off, and then the last few stages you're wiped out.
Right.
So, it's like we got to do this just to stay with the rest of the field. It's a level playing field argument. I guess, in terms of morals, we sort of draw the line at the needle. There's a needle involved, I guess, or a patch or a pill. It feels different than training at high altitude or sleeping in the oxygen tent, like the climbers do. Taking EPO feels like it's more artificial. This guy's argument of this book, Spitting the Soup, is that it's just a gradation, and we've just arbitrarily drawn the line there. And, I think there's much of it in the NFL has got to just be getting to the end of the season and still being able to play because it's so hard.
Well, I think that argument is very good because there's certain supplements that you can take that are effective, that actually do work. So how do we distinguish?
Yeah, what was the stuff that the baseball players,
Androstenedione. Dione.
Yeah, that's it.
They would most likely.
What is that?
Most likely bullshit. Most likely there was an excuse for them doing actual steroids.
Okay, right.
Because I think that
Mark McGuire.
Yes,
yeah.
I think that some forms of that stuff, some forms of those what they call pro-hormones, can actually trigger positive test results in maybe primitive, like back then when they were testing people, which is like nothing compared to what they're doing now, which is why, really interestingly, 2 Russian Olympic wrestlers have been stripped of their gold medals because of the pass. I think from 2008, they didn't even get the 2012 results in because they took their samples that they had back then, and now with newer, more sophisticated levels of testing, they've been able to show that these guys have been doing some shit.
Yeah.
But the UFC is an interesting proving ground for it because Jeff Nowitzki, who was the head of USADA and the drug program that got Lance Armstrong and a bunch of other people, Nowitzki now works for the UFC. And
he does?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And he has for quite a while now. And he has almost completely cleaned up the amount of people that are doing things. People still get caught every now and then, but the amount of people where their physiques have changed, where their performance has changed, where their results inside the octagon have like drastically dropped off is pretty obvious and significant. To the point where MMA fans and the pundits and analysts are looking at this and they're going, "Wow, this is fascinating." Like you're seeing people change. Like there's even a term that we use in MMA, like pre-USADA. Like we use pre-USADA and post-USADA. Like,
so they got him off the drugs. Are the fights still as good, exciting to watch? Okay.
Well, the best guys, for sure. Yeah, the best guys are still the best guys. But there's some guys that were the best guys that were on legal stuff. Like they used to allow testosterone replacement therapy. It used to be legal. So all you had to do was take steroids, go to your doctor, get off the steroids, your testosterone crashes, you go to the doctor, say, "Hey, doc, man, I think I got low test." "You know what, son? You have a condition. It's called low testosterone." Right. And they would prescribe it for you the same way, like when you were talking about alcoholism being a disease, they would decide that testosterone loss is a disease, and this man needs his medicine. And so they would give these guys testosterone, and like 35, 36-year-old guys would be just jacked to the and fighting, not just jacked and going to the beach.